From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matt the R. Meehan, alongside my partner, the Professor Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lu?
Matt, while things may fluctuate during different administrations, but in America, our government is huge. It is enormous. Think about it. The entire District of Columbia is pushing paper, right? Now, having said that, post offices have lawns that need to be mowed, and there's spackling that needs to be done on buildings. And believe it or not, government employees use hand soap, and some of them even use paper towels. Okay, so government contracts would be a wonderful way for any small to medium-sized business to supplement their revenue streams. But like anything else, you don't know what you don't know. So today we have retired Lieutenant Colonel Rick Howard, who is the preeminent expert in government contracts. Lieutenant Colonel, first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. And tell us, we all know the stereotypes on how difficult getting government contracts is. Give us the other side to that shiny coin. There's got to be a way where we could tap into that infinite pool of government revenue.
Well, first of all, thanks, guys, for having me on the podcast here. It's an honor for me to be on here talking with you guys and getting the word out about, what small businesses can expect trying to sell to the government. So, yeah, big picture, this is the opportunity. And this is really what startled me when I was a procurement officer for the government, which is, first, the government is the single biggest purchaser of goods and services in the world. You just alluded to this, right? They need all of these things like landscaping. They need construction. Every base is basically a small town. So all the infrastructure that goes into that, same needs as a regular town would, right? Then you have the fact that the government has to buy from small businesses, right? So roughly in the DoD, it's about 23%. That's a standard set by the Small Business Association, but they usually exceed that. And roughly it's 23% across the board. Some agencies have a higher percentage that they have to hit. But so if you think about the fact that the government's spending over $150 billion a year on small business contracts, they have to buy from small businesses, and less than 0.5% of small businesses are actually engaged in the process. So you have a very small amount of companies that are actually out there selling to the government in really anything you could think of: accounting services, legal services, your house painting company, your construction company, cybersecurity, tech. A lot of things people don't usually think about when they think about government contracts. They think about weapons usually, and airplanes and stuff like that. But it's a vast amount of spending on just about everything you can think of.
I've seen that movie, War Dogs.
Yeah, that comes up every now and then. Although entertaining, I think those guys it's probably a good place to start, because I think a lot of companies have a bad taste in their mouth because they see a movie like that, right, where these guys basically. One thing that is true is they went to a website and they saw all these government contract opportunities. They're like, hey, we just need to bid on these opportunities. Well, the website's changed. It's now sam.gov for any of your listeners that want to check it out. That's where you register your business. That's where you can find opportunities. But what those guys did in the movie is they just started writing proposals and they started winning these huge contracts. And that's not how it works. And that's where that bad taste usually comes from. Companies say, hey, Rick, I wrote 20 proposals for these contracts and I never win. And the more I do it, I can see that my competitors are winning. And it looks like these solicitations were written for my competitor. It's got to be rigged. And what I tell them is not rigged, but it's just they understand that you have to start before the solicitation comes out. And that solicitation probably was written for your competitor. They probably helped the government write that, because there's a phase of acquisitions, which is highly regulated, that allows you to work with the government on that. And just a lot of people don't know about it. So that's really where we start. We help people find who buys what they sell in the government and help them write the solicitation so they could be the company, the individual entrepreneur that is winning the contract.
So what's required for somebody to do business with the government? I know there's probably different things. There's different classifications, different licenses, but what's the bare minimum for somebody to start?
So, well, first you need to have a business that's registered, and you don't even have to have a business registered in the United States. There are foreign companies that are winning government contracts. A lot of them are overseas, but not all of them. But so you start with a business. And then the next thing that I tell people is, government contracting is the long game. There is a lot of process involved. It could be immensely rewarding. These contracts, if you ever want to sell your business, a lot of people go after these contracts just because it does increase the value of your company so much, because, there's very few contracts are going to be more stable than, if you have a 3-year, $10 million contract with the government, that's money that's coming in. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but I would say that in order for the small business to win that, they have to be prepared to spend some time going after those contracts. So it's really just having the long game in mind and being prepared to know that you're not going to win a contract in 30 days, right? That's, if people are telling you that's incorrect. So it does take a little bit of time. So,
I've been to these websites before, these government websites, and they seem like they were built before the internet came out. So they're really difficult to navigate. Any advice there? How do you guys help your teams navigate this?
Yeah.
Font that's 0.2.
I agree. I don't use them. There's a lot of other websites that basically, there's a government repository of information that is put together very poorly. And there are a lot of other websites, some of them you have to pay for, but that do a much better job, I guess, of presenting the information to you. But really, what we try to do, so at dodcontract.com, which is our website, I wanted to put together an entry-level academy to teach people what they really needed to know, because it's really easy to get overwhelmed and to get the wrong idea. In reality, what you just need to know is, how much does the government buy what you sell, right? That's the first thing. So depending on whatever your business is, we can see that because the government is required to publish, I think it's over 300 different criteria for every single contract they award. So there's an immense amount of information that's publicly available. So does the government buy what you sell? How much of it do they buy? What are your competitors making? So that gives you an idea of, how much can I make each year? And then a focused plan on selling to that agency. Like, there's specific offices in each agency that buy different things. Most people in the government can't buy anything. So it's all about narrowing your field of view. So we walk our clients through, we're just selling to who buys what you sell. And that might be 1 or 2 offices in the beginning. And there's going to be a series of steps that you take to sell what you're selling. And it varies depending on the industry. So it makes it a lot easier and a lot more focused.
Rick, are there like some low-hanging fruits like you hear about all the time, like minority-owned businesses or female-owned businesses or anything along those lines? Or maybe even someone like yourself, a retired vet. Are there certain preferences given to certain categories?
Yeah, that's a good question. So here's what I tell you. First of all, yes, there is. So just like at the beginning when we talked about the government setting aside 23% of contracts for small businesses, and that number varies a little bit. They also set aside contracts for woman-owned small businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, 8A, which is I guess you could say minority typically or disadvantaged business status. And you have to apply for these certifications or set-asides. And they each come with their own set of preferences. But, at the end of the day, you don't need those certifications to win contracts. I certainly never awarded a contract to a company because they had a set-aside or certification. And it's actually the wrong approach to take. By all means, go out and get them. Maybe that's the icing on the cake. But your first job as a small business is to solve the problem of the government. So what we really teach, what you really want to do, it's much like commercial or B2B sales, it's about relationships, right? So you're creating a relationship with the office that buys what you sell, and you're going in, they have a problem, understand the problem, go in there, hey, this is how we would solve that problem. And by the way, we're also a woman-owned small business, and that can have some, that can help you to, I guess, eliminate competition is what we teach people to do, right? So if you get in there early enough and you present a great solution, whether it's a technological solution or a service you provide, and then lead with, hey, we also recommend you set this aside for a woman-owned small business or 8A or SDVOSB. Well, now you've just eliminated all the big companies and all the small businesses that don't have that certification. So you've narrowed your competition, you've created a relationship, and now by the time that solicitation comes out, they know who you are. You probably help them write the solicitation. You're just a lot more likely to win.
So let's talk about that, right? So the work starts before the government even puts out what they're looking for.
Yes.
So how does one network with the government? As small business owners, what we generally do is we go out and network with other small business owners, right? And we're in the same room. What if you don't live in DC or one of these high governmentally run areas or?
Yeah, and that these are really great questions. So yeah, like if any of your listeners, I don't want them to turn the radio off now, right? Turn their podcast, but if they did, that would be the point to take away, is the work starts way before that solicitation comes out. But what you're saying now is a good point, and it's also, I think, another misconception. You certainly don't need to live in Washington D.C. to sell to the government. I don't live in Washington. I live in the Boston area, and so each government agency, they have procurement offices all over the place, right? And you're marketing only, or networking only, with the people that buy what you sell, right? So this goes back to, how am I going to identify the offices, for instance, that are buying the solutions that I'm offering? You can do that through a variety of websites, like usaspending.gov is a free one, right? And in there, you can look and see, search through years of government spending, right? So I could pop in there. If I owned an accounting firm or offered bookkeeping services, I could look at how much money was spent in bookkeeping services and look at the individual contracts using that website. And that's also giving me the offices, right? So it might say Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, and it might even tell me C3INN, which is at Hanscom Air Force Base. It's just top of mind because that's right around the corner from me. So now I know in there's going to be a division in an office that is buying the types of accounting services that I'm selling. So now I can go and start marketing to them. And in a specific way is looking for something called a sources sought or a request for information. And this is when, for me, for instance, right, like I flew the first half of my career and then ended up in acquisitions in the Air Force. When my son had some health issues, we came up here to use the hospitals. And so I knew flying very well. I was learning acquisitions, but I didn't know anything about cybersecurity. And that was the first really problem set that the government gave me to solve. So during the market research phase, I could put out a source of sought, I could put out an RFI, I could talk to companies and ask them, hey, how do I solve this problem that we're trying to solve? And so now you have a way as a company of seeing that, hey, this office has a problem. They have a cybersecurity challenge. I'm a cybersecurity business. They can find that sources sought on the websites like sam.gov, like I was telling you about, and respond to it. Maybe it's a 5-page paper. And now you can request a meeting. You know the exact person to talk to. So that's really what you're doing. You're identifying the people that have money and have a requirement. And like I'm still in the government, but the government's putting that out there. So you can reach out to those people ahead of time and then start building that relationship, helping them. And then, once you're on contract, you have those relationships, and you can always ask your government contracting officers, program managers, hey, can you recommend somebody else in the government that needs my solution? And, I did that all the time as a program manager. So those are some great places to start as far as identifying the people that you want to market to, email, and then actually an official process to begin that relationship.
Now, Rick, when the government, when a procurement office is doing their due diligence on a firm, let's say a proposal gets submitted and they're doing their due diligence. I mean, like if you're doing construction, landscaping, renovations, obviously there's the checklist. You want to make sure that there's workers' comp and disability coverage, and everyone is either a resident alien or an employed citizen, right? So how much further does the government go with government contracts versus the general small business concerns? I mean, are they doing full background checks and Patriot searches, or is it just as generic as any other business contract?
It really depends on the contract. I know this is probably not the answer you want, but every solicitation is a little bit different, right?
Sure.
So if I was
building F-18s, it's very different than if I'm landscaping.
Yeah, even a software solution, right? So if you have a software solution that's going to connect to a government system, a government network, there are going to be a lot of security parameters that need to be in place. And depending on, let's say you're putting it on a classified system, now we're starting to talk about, okay, we're non-US citizens involved with building the software or maintaining the software, right? So there are going to be contracts where you have to make sure everyone is a US citizen, but not all of them. There are differences between, like, for instance, if you are a construction company selling to the government, well, you most likely have to be bonded because of that and they're gonna tell you what that bond needs to be up to. Versus if you're performing a service like accounting or something else, you pick it, landscaping or something, you might not need that bond, right? So those might not be good examples, but the point is each solicitation, each contract is going to have different parameters that you need to meet, both as far as who's actually doing the work, your insurance, the different qualifications, certifications that you need. For instance, the government might say if you're providing acquisitions or program management services, the government may put in the solicitation that the people you're providing them need to have their PMP certification, right? And they might be, by the way, they might have that in there because I got to them 6 months earlier and said, hey, you really need to put PMP, because I know that Matt's company, their guys don't have the PMP. Mine do. I don't want him to be able to, write a proposal. So again, it all varies, but you can have a little bit of influence on what goes into that.
So Rick, are there any companies that work as brokers and do this, where they see the government contracts that come out and then they try to source it and put the contract together? How does that work?
There are. And God, this is a good question, because I just had a conversation with one of our new students who got taken for a loop by a company, charged him about $12,000 for a course. He didn't learn any of the actual process. And, I kind of walked him through what he needed to do in about half an hour to really be effective. And so I think this is 2 points: answering your question as to brokers and different individuals out there, and who to watch out for if you're thinking about selling to the government, right? But taking your question, I think, is the way you intended it. There are people out there, they call themselves integrators, right? So this is one way to do it. So you could be an integrator. You could have a registered business. I have a registered SDVOSB. And I could see a solution out there for, you pick the topic, right? But let's say it was some type of like CRM solution, or let's just say it was a CRM solution the government wanted. I don't have a CRM software, right? But they might want the software and maybe 3 people to actually maintain it, execute it, work with the government. So I might source both of those things from different companies, or I might just find a software company and hire 3 people and then provide program management. So as an integrator, I am doing some of the work, and I'm also finding subcontractors to work with me. There are other people who act as resellers, and they're just strictly reselling what somebody else has, and they're taking a percentage of that deal. Typically, they also are registered, and they would be the one actually selling to the government.
So what they would do is they would have their own company. They would actually get the contract from the government, then go and source it on their end, right? They're not brokering a government contract, more or
right?
less.
But that's correct. So I would, if I was advising somebody, that's how I would tell them to do it. There are people that will try to broker a deal, and people have tried to hire me to broker deals for them. But if you look at the federal acquisitions regulations, and this has basically been regulated since the birth of the country. We've got, we have not emails, but we have letters from George Washington basically like pissed at both contractors that have taken advantage of the system and government officials that have given their buddies contracts, which started this regulation and deregulation, which now we have like 60,000.
I said blue coats, not red coats.
Yeah, exactly. So, but at one point, my point being is that paying somebody a commission actually used to be illegal in the federal acquisitions regulations, which of course in sales, like commissions drive a lot of sales and kind of motivate your guys to do the work. But now it's permitted, but there are some qualifications to that, right? So typically, if you're paying someone a salary, you could pay them a commission. But I tend to step back anytime somebody wants to just try to bring everything together and just take a piece of it without having the company. To me, that gets into some gray area with the FAR, and I don't touch it personally. And I would recommend anyone look or talk to a lawyer before actually using someone like that.
Rick, you remind me of an instance a couple of months ago. We had a nice gentleman who had a hydraulics lift business. He's doing a lot of DOT contracts for bridges and such.
Yeah.
And Matt had to procure him a line of credit just to be able to bridge the time gaps in between payments. Is that an anomaly, or is there some truth to Uncle Sam being a little bit tight with the purse strings?
That is not an anomaly. And again, it depends on your business and what you're selling, right? So I sell a lot of, for instance, software type related things to the government, and we get paid. We have to go through the contracting process, and they pay for it, and then we give them the solution. But there are certainly, especially with services, there could be a 30 to 60 day lapse when you bill the government and they pay. Now the government pays, you're going to get paid. But because of that, there are financial institutions. I've had some of them on my podcast on DoD Contract Academy, where they focus specifically on businesses that are selling to the government. And the message, and I've hooked them up with some of our clients and our students as well, which is like, look, Rick, once you're on contract and we can see that contract, we can finance you. Like, that's our job. We're providing you the finances so you can pay your people while you're waiting to get bridge the gap with the government. And typically it's not, I think it can be presented as a bigger problem than it really is. I think the biggest problem is that initial 60 days, right? If you weren't expecting it, right? But when you know it's coming, and you do have these financial institutions that you can rely on that focus on this, because they're going to loan you the money. If you've won the contract, it's going to be easy for you to get that. I say easy, but that's your proof to get the funds that you need. And then you just plan for it and you cycle it out. So, if you're billing them every 30, 60, 90 days, you can plan that out with your guys and then work with one of those financial shops to ensure you have the funds.
Rick, let me ask you this. What's the number one thing that you see the government buying? What's the biggest spend on?
Well, okay. So big picture, I would say that the biggest spend is a category of spending, and that would be around software, technology, cybersecurity, IT. It all kind of fits into one lump sum.
Come on, I wanted you to tell me toilet paper.
No, I wouldn't. I personally, I tend to stay away from commodities too, because although the government buys, I was going to swear. I don't want to swear on your podcast, but I was going to say,
feel free, go right ahead.
All right, well, they buy a shitload of toilet paper, but they're probably buying it at lowest price technically acceptable, right? So now you're competing with everybody else on for pennies on the dollar. So you just got to know what business you're in and be prepared for that.
So what do you think if somebody doesn't really, well, they have a business now, but they want to get in the business of selling to the government, right? Mm-hmm. Well, let's say you're starting a business today.
Yeah.
What industry would it be? It would be technology and software to get into sell to the government, but there's a high barrier to entry from what you had said. So
yeah. So
is there a sweet spot somewhere?
It depends on your background. So for me, it would probably be software, but I have a lot of connections and partnerships already, right? So an integrator is an interesting way to get in. But really, I think the best way to do it is to approach it. There's two ways. So there's two pieces of advice I would give somebody listening. One is to approach it as a subcontractor. So that way, you're not going to be the prime. I would still register your business, and learn about the process. But now what you could do is look, for the most part, the government doesn't buy things in like specific solutions. They buy answers to big problem sets, right? So I have and I think I gave you an example earlier, like with the CRM, right? They didn't just want the software; they wanted the people to run the software, and they wanted the tail that comes with that, right? Probably 3 or 4 other things. So a lot of times the government is going to put out let's stick with request for information or source of sought. Hey, I'm trying to solve this human resources problem. I need the software and the people and a few other things, and you provide the people. Well, now you could go out to a software company that maybe, and I would recommend this, that's already selling to the government. And this is the way they're going to respond to you. You find it early, like I'm recommending, and you can solve part of the problem. Find the company that solves the other part that already has contracts with the agency you're trying to sell to, because you can see that all online. And then just go reach out to them. Hey, I've got this opportunity. It's about 6 months out. I've already reached out to the office. I've set up a meeting. I'm looking for someone to do the part that I can't do. And they're going to want to meet with you because now you're talking with an office. You have an opportunity, and they can be the prime on that contract and you could be the sub. And that's a great way to start because they're really the ones that are on the hook with the government as the prime, and you can learn from them as a mentor. It's always great to have a mentor. So subbing is a great way to get yourself into it. And in the second way, this is for anyone that's listening, that's developing something. If you're developing a technological solution, you have something innovative. Maybe you have a solution that you're selling on the market right now. It doesn't have to be software. I mean, there's a lot of different areas this is on, but there is a program called the Small Business Innovative Research program. And basically, a lot of people think these are grants, government grants, and they look like them, but they're actually government contracts. And this is the government funding your startup idea or your technology idea. So let's say you had your security company and you had a biometric scanner. Well, we had a recent SIB, or topic will come out, Small Business Innovative Research topic, and it'll say, hey, we're looking for innovative solutions to provide security for a base. Well, that's something that your biometric scanner would fit. So you write, and by the way, barrier to entry on this one is very low because it's designed for businesses that essentially aren't usually selling to the government. You write a 5-page white paper, send it in. Phase one, if they like your idea, is typically it's not a lot, it's like up to 150 grand. But what you're actually doing in a phase one is they're helping introduce you to people in the government that might need your solution. And as soon as you find somebody, and you can do that work on your own too, and I recommend you do, but you find someone that likes the idea and they can sponsor you. And they don't have to sponsor you with money or really much work on their part. And that's what's really nice about this. You can actually go to the user in the government and they usually aren't involved. Say, yeah, I love that biometric scanner. I'm going to sign this memo. And now you can submit for phase two, which is usually up to 1.3 million. I just saw one for 1.9. Now you're developing the solution or maybe modifying your solution for government use. And there's probably a demo of some sort at the end of that. But it's a great way. A lot of our clients are very successful there, and they use that funding instead of venture, instead of investing. You own your company at the end of it and the IP, and it's designed for dual use. It's really an amazing way to do it. And from the time you submit a proposal, it's about 3 to 4 months before you're on contract. But in government terms, that's pretty quick. So, and it's a great way to start.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ways to do it.
Rick, you've given us some wonderful tips, and I'm certain small, medium-sized business owners listening today are going to take advantage of it. But after 9 to 5, Matt and I are just a couple of guys, and we just want some war stories, man. Give us some good stories back to your Air Force days.
Oh, man, I know we started this off telling you about the old Southie guy that I ran into in Okinawa. We've got a few, but probably one of my favorites is, although, after 9/11, we were deploying massively. I was flying intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, but I think one of my most harrowing experiences was actually flying out in the Pacific. And, they have these typhoons that come that are basically hurricanes, right? And there were we evacuated this island we were on because the typhoon was coming. And then we saw that another typhoon was headed down. We had to get back. So basically we're flying back, and these two typhoons are basically trying to thread the needle to get back to this island that we were supposed to land on. And the two typhoons just closed in around us. So now we're basically stuck in this hurricane on both sides of us trying to fly into a base. And, nobody could see out the window, planes shaking like this. Everyone wasn't screaming, but I think everyone was wondering if we were going to make it or not. But luckily we were able to, with our radar and everything, kind of get through it and find. I think we saw the runway about 10 feet before we hit it on the strip. But that's probably the most harrowing adventure that I had.
Rick, do you feel that your experiences in the military and these high pressure situations just trained you for a successful career in business?
I think it definitely helps.
What could possibly get you stressed on a 9 to 5 after an experience like that?
Well, Professor, I want to know why they call you the professor, by the way. But I will tell you, just business aside, the military officer corps changed my life, and it is just if there's a program that can take an individual at such a young age, I was 23 when I came in, put them in charge of people, first of all, as an officer, but now it's that training, and then training, which probably wouldn't be legal if you were just a civilian, because they're putting you in harm's way sometimes, and there's a little bit of danger, but just, hey, leading people, training, lead people, problems to solve. It's hard. You're critiqued. Then once you get it, the reward is more people, more money to manage, harder missions, more training, more education, and just constantly deploying and sending you to get master's degrees and coming back and leading people. And hey, here's, at one point I had $82 billion in contracts in Saudi Arabia. I was living in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for a year before I retired to manage their foreign military sales portfolio. So, I had an office in their Ministry of Defense, and I'm driving in armed convoys every day in and out of there. And probably one of the best and most challenging experiences of my career. But when I look back at all that cycle of that constant growth, it really certainly prepared me for the business world, but also just life. I think you're right. I mean, it puts things in perspective, when you're looking at problems that could end your life or the life of others versus, something that's kind of trivial.
So Rick, can you tell everybody where they can find the DoD Academy and you online?
Yeah, you can find me at dodcontract.com. That's our hub. So you can go there. You can check out our courses. We have basically a monthly membership. So it's a small fee each month. And we also have weekly coaching. So you can see the courses and you can talk to me and some of the team and on your specific use case. What are you trying to sell? Or if you're trying to figure out your niche. The other place you can go for free is our podcast, DoD Contract Academy. And that's where we have a lot of business owners that are killing it out there selling to the government. So you could probably hear me rant and rave, but it's probably better some of the episodes we have with business owners that are probably selling something like you sell. We've done a lot of different industries, and you can get a lot of insight listening to someone that's been through it and has done it before.
Rick, thank you so much, man. We want to be respectful of your time. We appreciate you being here. I have one question before I let you run.
Yeah.
When you were flying around in that plane in the previous life, did you ever see any UFOs up there?
That's funny. I think I was spending so much time because I was a navigator. So I think I spent so much time trying to keep the pilots from killing me that I missed the aliens. But I'll tell you, there's some interesting stuff going on out there. I don't know.
That wasn't a no, Matthew.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for the Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you in the next episode.